Okay, welcome back to part 3 of Excel hands-ons. Okay, now we kind of go and use the results tab. We want to fill it, and it's kind of that we want to fill it with KPIs, key performance indicators. Like we want to know stuff like how many transactions per category were done. So how much was per category purchased. Um, how much revenue did we make per region, all of that stuff. And for those things, again, SQL would be much faster. Since we're in Excel, I will tell you how it's done in Excel. um, but before we can do that, we kind of need to know how much products were per transaction being sold. So if we look at data, we see, and so I'm currently deleting that so we have more space. We see price, we see where, what is sold when. The thing is, how many were sold is missing to calculate revenue. Or if it's only one, then we could count it now. But it could be that someone is buying 2 or 3 packages of gummy bears. And I do assume that no one's buying more than 3 packages of gummy bears, but no judgment done from my side here. So the thing is, we need another column with amount, how much is sold. And to fill that, data is missing, and I just, since we need data, I just would use a random function to make up that data. And to be honest, that's how I made up the other data as well, with random functions. However, there are several random functions, and we kind of will now use a random number between a certain range. There's another option how to make random numbers, but I assume that at least one item is being purchased. We cannot buy half a package of gummy bears, and no one's buying more than 3 items at once. That's my assumption, and that's exactly a number between a certain range. So it's a random number between a range. In short, the function would be rand for random between. So rand between. Or for you who didn't get it, that's the function. Again, I'm using the German version, so for me it's Zufalls for me it's Zufallsbereich. And you can see Zufallszahl or Zufallsbereich, we're using Zufallsbereich. And in rand between, so we start with what's the low end of the range between, so to say. That's for us the 1. And what's the upper part of the between part, the range? That's now the obere Zahl, which is the 3 in our case. And now we have a random number between 1 and 3 for all iterations. Problem with random numbers, you will encounter in a second, is that every time I do hit enter, they're readjusted. So if I then want to calculate the Umsatz, the revenue or something, and that would be this times this, so the price times the amount, that would again be changed. To compensate for that, there's an easy way. You usually do not face a problem, but you're facing it now with me. You do copy all numbers. So we had again Control Shift down, hit copy with Control C, go back up, go to the first entry, and we do not paste it as we used to. Now we paste it with a right click. And then we have options of how we want to paste it. And the first thing is what you usually do. You just paste it. That means you paste it with all the values. So the whole function is being pasted, which again recalculates whatever's standing there. Or the second option would be only to paste the values. So the function is overwritten, but the values which are currently standing here, like for example 1, 3, 1, are pasted in. So we do that, and now if you go on that, there's only a 1, there's only a 2, and not the function anymore, as you can see up here. That means that is fixed as well, and everything's fine. By the way, revenue you can just directly leave here. We will need it anyways. Now coming to what we actually want to do. Let's go to the results table. And as I mentioned, I'd like to make that a bit more beautiful, so I start with my bordering. And then what I have is, I want to have each category here, and the categories were other foods, it was vegetables, it was drugstore items, and it was sweets. I think that's it, right? Sweets, other foods, vegetable, drugstore items. Exactly. And then we want some KPIs. For example, we want to know in how many transactions those items were in. So how many people have purchased something out of the category other foods. But it doesn't matter if they purchased two, at least it was one transaction where an other foods item was in. That's what we want to count here. But we might want to know as well how many products out of this category were sold. So in one transaction, 1 to 3 items could be sold. So this is then amount sold per category. Then let's call this transaction. You know what I mean. And the last one is we want to the revenue per category. Revenue per category. Let's say we want to make those three things. All right. What we need to do is then make these calculations. But before we do that, I will quickly format it so it looks a bit more nice. So gray background, bold. Then I'd like to have columns here. Then I'd like to have one thicker column around and one thicker column here. That looks better already. So we want to calculate in how many transactions was in the category other foods. All right. Hence, we do not want to use a VLOOKUP or something, or we do not want to make an if, but we do want to count. So if we go to data, we basically want to count how often sweets or other foods is named here. So we want to count if in this column is a certain value. And every time this certain value is displayed, we want to count. So if let's say sweets, that's a 1. Then again, is there sweets? 2. Is there sweets? No, 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 3. And so forth. That's how we want to count. So as I already tried to hint you to, that's then somehow a count if. A really often used function, count if. You use that all the time for whatever you need to, for a lot of things you need to do. And again, for me in Germany, it's then the if is a wenn, the count is a zählen, so it's zählen wenn. Now there's a differentiation. We have zählen wenn or count if and count if s. There's an s in the end. What's the difference? Well, the count if counts if there's a certain value in the table. The count if s allows us to make more if clauses. So here on top, there's only one search criteria. So only, for example, we can search for other foods. Here we could say, is it other foods and did someone purchase more than 2 items? We can make a combination. We have more criteria to check. If we have such a case, we need to use count if s. If we only have one case, it's count if. So let's use count if. And that was wrong. I shouldn't have pressed enter, but double clicked it, then I'm here. Now I need to tell him where to search for. So it's the other way around than in a VLOOKUP. Now I have to first tell him where to look and then what to look for. In VLOOKUP it was the other way around. So let's tell him where to look. And it's in data, it's either of those. So let's take this one, and I'm going from the top to the bottom of the table by pressing Ctrl-Shift down and mark the whole table. Then I'm giving it a semicolon to tell him what to search for. And this is now this category. Before I hit enter, let's quickly think about if we need to hold something steady here. Later on I want to pull it down, so B3 is what I look for, but that needs to go down as well, because the next time I want to look for vegetables, the next time I want to look for drugstore items, and so forth. So I need to hold steady basically the category fast, right? And that's why I actually need to put in here $signs. However, since it's formatted as a table, it has overridden the D3 to D10,000 whatever. So we need to go back here and change that quickly. We delete that again, go to data, go back to our table, put in again this one, hit Shift Control down, and then we have everything marked. Then let's hit Shift, only Shift, and put the up key. So we go up by one row, and now you can see you have it in your normal view again. That's something I usually have not encountered that often, because I usually do not format tables with the standard format formation option on the top right here, as I did with you today to show you that this is possible. If you do not format it in a standard way, Excel formats it slightly differently. So it doesn't know that it's a table. By knowing it's a table, you could use what you saw in this special brackets, which are more spiky in the end. You can just write a name down, and this whole column is selected. Usually you would have to tell from G3 until, with double point, G whatever the last row is. And that's what we usually do, and then we can use the $signs again. So I encounter that not that often, because I usually do not format it as a table. So now this is only this row, and we need to go to 38, and now it's fine, and we have here 5,386 as the items, and we can drag that down, and you can see here we went, this kept steady, but we went down here one, and somehow drugstore items is wrong because it's called only item, and that should solve our problem. All right, now we have counted 4 times our categories, but is that correct? Is this number the number we need, or did we miss anything in our table, some rows, and didn't count for them? In such a case, it's usually a smart move to make a checksum. So something to control if you're correct. And as checksum already states, most of the time it's a sum how you control stuff. So let's just put the sum down here. And the sum, we could now basically add those 4 values up, or use a formula as well, which calculates the sum, which is called sum, or in Germany, Summe. Mark those 4 values, hit enter, with 17,536 items. However, we counted to 38, so 2 is missing. No, they aren't, because we started at 3, so the first 2 lines weren't counted, because this was the header as well as my line I inserted here. So those two lines are calculated and everything's fine. All right, now we have the transactions, but now we want to know how many items are sold per category. In that case, we do not want to count how often a certain value occurs in one column. So we do not want to count how often we see that, but we might want to build the sum of those values. So if it's sweet, take 1. If it's sweet again, add those 2. They'll already make 3 out of it. So it's probably the sum if the category is the same as in the other part, right? So it's not a Countif, but a sum if. So sum if, or for me it's Summe wenn. Again, we have the option to put in an S if we want to make more than one criteria which we want to check. However, in that case, we only want to check if it's from the category. So again, we have to make the range in which we want to look, and then there's another range where the sum should be made. So that means Bereich or area is basically this one here. And then we have later on what we want to search and then where to build a sum, which will then be here. So we first have to say from here, Control Shift down to here. I'm going up, I'm going up 1 to again make the $, put in here the 8. Then we're done, so we put in the semicolon, say what to search for, which is in the results table, other foods, and then where the other area is, which is the amount, because we want to calculate how much we're sold. So Control Shift down, and that seems wrong exactly because I was already down. So from here again down, 1 up with only the shift, and then we make the $, yeah, but 238. And we have 4 numbers. We can make the sum here as well by dragging this one to the right, because the only thing it should change is then make this the C to a D. So it's the D. So 35,000. Is that correct? Probably, because we have a random number between 1 and 3, so on average it should be around 2. 2 times 17,500 should be roughly 35,000. So we're quite there, and I do not want to control that because it seems alright. You could by making the sum of this in the bottom here. So the last one, revenue per category. Well, since we have the revenue already calculated here, it should be easy because we only have to make the sum of those if it's the correct category. So it should be exactly what's standing here. So I'm copying that, go here, paste it into, but this is the category and this is where the amount sold is. So I'm quickly checking, and the amount is at I, revenue is at J. So this one should then not be I, but column J. And that's the only thing which should change. And then we can build the sum here as well to make it look a bit better. This should then be in euros, so we can format the cells, go on that, and then we can say no, it's a currency with 2 semicolons and it's euro or whatever currency you want it to be. And then again, let's finalize that. And it looks already nicer. All right, there is the now I'm happier. Cool. So now you know Countif, SUMIF, quite powerful. Let's do extend on those two formulas. In the next exercise, which you start now, I want you to make use of it. Exactly, I would like you to do the following. Make me a table where basically you give me the revenue per store and how much is sold per store. So how much sold per store? So per store, individual store, Tübingen 2, Ludwigsburg 3, Reutlingen 1, how much they were sold by using amount, and then how much revenue was made by using revenue. And then I want you to make another table where you go on the regional level. So if it's in Tübingen or Ludwigsburg and so forth, and tell me how much revenue was made per region. Not per store, but per region in a larger cluster. See you with the solution table in the next video. Have fun.